Hello, team. There is no better time to learn biology than right now. It's time for another biology with Miss Judd. Have you hugged a tree lately? If not, you might want to give it some thought. We all owe our existence to plants like those trees and other organisms that capture light. In fact, most life on Earth is possible because the sun provides a continuous supply of energy to those ecosystems. Remember from our unit on ecology that the sun is the ultimate source of energy in ecosystems. But how does that energy become usable, right? How does it become the food? How does it provide fuel for metabolic reactions, growth, development, reproduction? Because we can't use light directly for our needs. Instead, it first has to be converted into chemical energy, and that's the process of photosynthesis, what we are going to dive into today. It sounds like we might need to go to Ghost Miss Judd. Hi, you guys. Ghost Miss Judd here, excited to talk about energy and photosynthesis. We were just talking about how the sun's energy needs to be captured and converted to chemical energy. Energy is the ability to do work, whether that is breathing, whether that is moving your finger, whether that is growing, reproducing, hunting. You're using that energy. You're able to do work. Without this ability to obtain and use energy, life would cease to exist. In cellular energy, it comes in two main currencies that we're going to dive into: glucose and ATP. Glucose is also known as sugar. Glucose is long-term storage of large amounts of energy. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. That's short-term storage and releases small amounts of energy for cells. It becomes ADP when a bond breaks, energy is released, and a phosphate is lost. What this means is if you look at this molecule of glucose, there are a lot of lines going on. There are a lot of bonds. Energy is held in bonds. ATP is all about breaking and adding bonds. So if you look, their high energy is between these phosphates. When it's ADP, energy is added with another bond to make ATP. That last phosphate breaks off, releasing the energy held in that bond. This is kind of like a rechargeable battery. ATP, when there's three phosphates, is the charged up. There's that extra bond that holds energy. When it releases that phosphate, it releases the energy out and becomes ADP, two phosphates. And then energy is required to attach that phosphate. Energy is stored in that bond. That's ATP. When we use it, it becomes ADP, and it goes around and around and around like a rechargeable battery. In photosynthesis, we're going to talk about another energy carrier, NAD plus and NADPH. It's the same concept. There's an extra bond here between the phosphate and the hydrogen. So there's energy stored in the NADPH. The NADP plus is kind of like your dead battery that needs to be charged. We are going to talk about how we create these cellular currencies from the sun. This process of photosynthesis is taking sun's energy to create chemical energy that's usable by plants and animals. Photosynthesis can answer the questions of who, what, when, where. Who goes through photosynthesis? Autotrophs, so plants and plant-like protists. When does this happen? During the day. Photosynthesis is all about capturing the sun, so it makes sense that this process would happen when the sun is out. What is going on? In photosynthesis, energy from the sun is converted into chemical energy stored in the bonds of carbohydrates, which is a sugar, which is glucose. Where is this happening? This is happening in the chloroplast, which is an organelle. So at the bottom of your page, I want you to draw this chloroplast right here. So we are going to pause and draw. The chloroplast has some key parts. We have our stroma, which is the space being held, and then the thylakoids, which are these little green pancakes. A stack of these green thylakoids is called a grana. This is important because in photosynthesis, we are converting sunlight to sugars through different steps. Now, the general equation here is that we combine together sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to create sugars and oxygen. Now, we need 6 carbon dioxides and 6 molecules of water in order to make that one really large, long-term storage sugar called glucose. What's released out is 6 molecules of oxygen. That's called being balanced. If I have 6 carbons in this glucose molecule, I need to start with 6 carbons from the carbon dioxide. The thing that absorbs the sunlight to capture the sunlight is called a pigment. It's a light absorbing molecule. In plants, chlorophyll is the main photosynthetic pigment. What it does is it absorbs red and blue and reflects to our eyes green. So it's absorbing most of the energy from the sun, but reflects back that green color. That's why when we look at plants, we see the color green. Once a plant has absorbed the sunlight using chlorophyll, it goes into the first step of photosynthesis called the light-dependent reactions. You are going to fill out your chart using this information. The light-dependent reaction occurs in the thylakoid. What is happening is that energy from the sun is captured by chlorophyll molecules. It's converted into chemical energy in the form of ATP and NADPH. What goes into the light-dependent reactions are water and sunlight. What comes out are those charged chemical energy molecules, ATP, NADPH, and then oxygen as a byproduct is released. What this looks like is if we were to just look at that first step, the light-dependent reactions were in the thylakoid, those green pancakes. Light comes in, water comes in. That light charges up the dead batteries, creating ATP and NADPH. Oxygen leaves as a byproduct. Essentially, that hydrogen attaches here, so all that's left is oxygen to leave. These charged molecules, ATP and NADPH, then go into the second step, which is called the Calvin cycle or the light independent reactions. This is happening in the stroma. ATP and NADPH release energy to turn 6 carbon dioxides into glucose. So we're taking short-term storage and turning it into long-term storage. What goes in is ATP, NADPH, and carbon dioxide. ATP and NADPH release their energy, so they leave as ADP and NADP+. And then we create that long-term storage of glucose, and that's the goal. What this looks like is we have ATP, NADPH coming into this cycle, carbon dioxide comes in, that energy is stored into glucose, and so ATP is now dead, so it's ADP. NADPH is now dead, so it's now NADP+, and that goes back to the light reactions. And it's one big cycle of light coming in, water coming in, charging up the smaller short-term storage to be combined to create long-term energy storage. These molecules go back, get charged up to make long-term storage, and it's a constant cycle. Whew, that was a lot of information, Ghost Miss Judd. Thank you for explaining it so well. From here, you are going to use your notes to do the practice. Essentially, you're going to take the words that you wrote and apply it to a diagram. Make sure that you have your notes and your practice done by next class. Remember, your teacher is going to check it. I am so proud of you guys. You're doing some great work. Have a good day and make good choices.